Oh boy, this isn't something that I usually talk about. I went through a lot of trouble to make sure no one associates me with Augustus Robert Simmons. I moved states when I turned 18. I changed my last name. I tell everybody that my dad was a soldier who lost his life fighting for our country, and that I lived with my uncle and my aunt since I was 9. Well, my dad was a soldier, but he left the army before I was even conceived. And after my mom died in a car accident when I was 2, he dedicated himself to taking care of me. I'm not just here to talk about what he did, although I'll get to that too. I want to talk about what kind of person he was, before he started killing. I'll start with the beginning. Augustus was born Augustus Franks, son of Annie and Drew Franks. Drew was my biological granddad, and he fell ill and died when my dad was about 8. He was there when Drew breathed his last breath. And 2 years later, Annie remarried a widower that was 15 years older than her named Herbert Simmons. He brought in 2 children from his previous relationship, and when my father was old enough, he changed his surname to Simmons. I don't have many memories of Grandpa Bert myself, only that he was quite frail with sunken pale eyes and a grin not unlike a skeleton's. He was nice enough though. He let me sit on his lap and watch game shows with him, while my grandma made dinner in the kitchen. From what I got from my dad, he and Bert were very close. And despite not being his biological son, Bert doted on Augustus. Some might say he even spoiled him. There wasn't many of the typical serial killer warnings when it came to my dad. He wasn't abused. He didn't kill animals or wet the bed. It was just quiet. Really quiet. His explosive temper though, that was a problem. When he was 17, he was caught cheating on an English test. When the teacher failed him, he responded by picking up his desk and throwing it at the teacher's head. It missed, thank God it missed, and it ended up crashing into the chalkboard and cracking it down the middle. He ended up getting suspended and it almost ended up on his record, but the charges were dropped when the teacher moved. I'd already brought up his army stint. I think Grandma convinced him to sign up in hopes that it would calm his temper. But shortly before that, Augustus met my mom, Laura. Laura was good for him. He would write her a letter every week when he was enlisted and overseas. The moment he was out, he drove up to her house with a ring, and had promised to never lose his temper with her. Maybe if she hadn't gone for that drive. Maybe if it hadn't been raining. Maybe if that one dickwad wasn't drinking. Augustus would have never done the things that he did. I think the world would be a lot different if maybes meant anything. I was his only child. He never remarried after Laura died. I have no memories of her, just a picture that I keep next to my bed of her on the day of her wedding. My dad never talked about her. But he was good to me. That's something I can say without the shadow of a doubt. During the day, I would stay with his parents while he worked. He was always home for dinner. Weekends were a hangout time. We would go to the park, we'd go hiking. And one summer we even had a camp out in Grandma's backyard. Grandpa Bert had chosen to scare the crap out of us by pounding on the side of the tent. I screamed and Dad and Grandpa laughed. And Grandma gave me hot cocoa in the morning, while giving both of the guys a stink eye. Now this isn't to say that my dad was perfect. Even at a young age, I saw signs of his vicious temper. Fist holes in the walls. A time where money was tight because he'd blown his lid at his boss and he ended up losing his job. The unsettling silence of a bad day. All it taken was one thing to go wrong for him to explode, screaming and swearing at whatever had pissed him off. When I was 8, the gas station attendant accidentally gave him the wrong change. My dad screamed at this poor teenager until the kid threatened to call the cops. And then my dad told me to go sit in the truck. I'm not sure what happened after that, but my dad was simmering quietly on the way home. That night, Augustus claimed his first victim. 11:23 p.m., the same gas station we were at that day. It was initially thought as a robbery gone bad. Somebody broke into the gas station and shot up the attendant, the 19-year-old Aaron Price. He was a senior in high school and was held back a year due to bad grades. He was a bit of a clown but was unreliable when it came to getting things done in a timely manner. Some poor trucker came in and found the crumpled body of the cashier with like a dozen holes in his face and chest. He was already dead by the time the guy got there. There wasn't any footage of the incident. The security cameras hadn't been working in years. I think Aaron's mom ended up suing and getting some good payout because of that. Maybe if the camera had been working, they would have gotten footage of her son's killer. Maybe my dad wouldn't have killed 3 more people. Augustus's second victim was Rose Landry, 49 years old, the owner of the local jewelry store, Rosie's. Her friends called her a shrewd business owner. The people that worked for her called her a penny-pinching miser and a bitch. If you had the nerve to pee on company time, you would have ended up getting an earful and possibly Dr. Pay. But she was a great mother and so excited to be a grandmother. She was on her way home with a bag of brand new baby clothes when she was attacked. 5 stab wounds to the chest, finished off by a slice to the throat. Witnesses had spotted a tall man wearing a black coat leaving the store shortly after her, but that lead went cold quickly. I remember that night I was at my grandparents'. Dad had stashed me there and said he had something to do at the office. I conked out after the 3rd rerun of Wheel of Fortune. Sometime late, I remember fingers brushing my cheek. It was comfortable, familiar, so I didn't even stir. When I woke up the next morning, my grandma was fretting about my bloody nose that I had clearly had last night, judging by the streak of blood on my cheek. Grandma just wiped it off and said no harm done because I hadn't gotten any on the couch. My dad was more careful after that incident. Evidence on his child's cheek could have been the end of him. He made doubly sure to get cleaned up before he came to check on me. And he always did check on me after he killed someone. The next victim was the most mourned, I would wager. 21-year-old Rebecca Lawson, or just Becky to her friends. The prom queen, the pageant princess, voted the most likely to succeed in her class. She was on her way to fame because she was beautiful and she knew it. There was an incident her junior year where she clawed a girl's face because the other girl made the fatal mistake of saying that Becky had gained a few pounds. There were 2 DUIs and a drunken disorderly on her record, but most people thought Becky could do no wrong, including Becky herself. She was found beaten to death in her own home. The skin of her face flayed off with the same knife that killed Rose. The coroner confirmed that Becky had been skinned while she was still alive. When it came out that the same person had murdered both Rose and Becky, people talked about a serial killer. Nobody connected Aaron to them, since the killer in that case had used a gun, but women were advised to keep up their guard, and not to stay out after dark, and to keep their doors and windows locked. And that's when Augustus went back to men, and where he made his mistake. The 37-year-old Matthew Donnelly. He worked at the local bank and had a wife, and 2 mistresses and 5 kids between them. What a winner. And that wasn't enough for his poor ego either, as he was balls deep in a prostitute named Becky, when a man in a ski mask broke in and began stabbing the son of a bitch. Matthew put up a fight. He had ended up ripping off the man's mask, but after about 8 more stab wounds, he bled out on the cheap motel floor. It was a mistake. Augustus didn't kill Betty, and she had seen his face. I remember it like it was yesterday. My dad was pushing me on the swing at the park. We were having a very serious debate between mac and cheese or spaghetti for lunch when the police car rolled up. 2 officers walked up to my father and the words they said stopped me dead in my tracks. "You're under arrest for the murder of Matthew Donnelly." Smart choice arresting him in front of me. It meant that he didn't put up a fight. But a shitty choice too, as I can safely say that I was scarred for life. Augustus tried to wiggle out of it. Tried. But his excuses and alibis fell apart after Grandma confessed to washing his bloody clothes after Rose was murdered. Grandpa Bert stood firm and insisted that his stepson had been home for all the murders, but my dad soon broke and confessed to all 4 of them. I don't think the cops expected that one. My life fell apart. Fellow kids kept their distance because of their parents' say-so. I could only see my dad once a month and I never got to give him hugs. I wasn't allowed to touch my own father. Grandpa Bert had a heart attack shortly after my dad was incarcerated and passed away. I was sent to live with my aunt and uncle after that. If they had had it their way, I would have never visited my father again, but Grandma was on my side for that one. After all, he might have been a bad person, but he was a good father. Augustus Simmons was executed 7 years ago. I was 14. I wasn't allowed to attend, but I was the last person that he saw. The years in prison had changed him. After he got into a fight where he shanked an ex-gang member in the neck, and he survived out of sheer dumb luck, he lived in near total isolation other than my monthly visits. He looked 20 years older than he really was. But he looked at me with such love that I never doubted that he cared for me. I could see how much he wanted to hug me, to touch his child one last time before he was given the lethal injection. But he just smiled and took my hands. I can never forget what he said. "Don't leave anything unfinished. I love you." I've pondered what he meant by that for years and years. I could never figure it out. Until I stumbled across something of Grandpa Bert's while going through the basement of my grandparents' home. My grandpa just recently passed, and God rest his soul, and I was going through stuff to see if there was anything that I could sell, when a leather-bound book with an inverted cross stamped on the cover fell out from behind a box. It was a journal, one with very specific instructions on how to become a ruler in hell by murdering 7 people. If you think it sounds like complete hogwash, I don't blame you, but it's a powerful book. I came to realize this when I found out my grandfather, the man whose favorite show was Family Feud, had killed 7 people in cold blood. Some research confirmed that his victims were real people, and that their disappearances or deaths have never been solved. Let's see if you can figure out the pattern of Herbert's victims. A guy who beat on his wife and kids, an alcoholic who would drink his weight in beer nearly weekly, a minister who skimmed off the offering plate to pay for a house, a do-nothing layabout who mooched off others' hard work, a woman who ruined her sister's life just because she was jealous of how beautiful she was, a peeping Tom, a woman who spent all the time looking in the mirror instead of caring for her children. You get it now. Wrath, gluttony, greed, sloth, envy, lust, and pride. Grandpa Bert finished his task, but my dad didn't. In his journal, Grandpa Bert says that my dad moved too fast, and he should have paced out his murders, and moved them between states. But that wasn't my dad's style, I guess. But now I understand. Never leave anything unfinished. Dad needs 3 more souls to his name before he can make hell into his paradise. And well, if I can kill 3 people, what's 7 more in the grand scheme of things?